Welcome to Screen Quest, a podcast where a fellowship of film lovers and armchair movie experts plays film roulette. I am one of your hosts from Jacksonville, Florida, Chris Waterman, joined this evening by May Finch,
Hey,
also of
everyone.
Jacksonville. And we have Will Rotondi from Greenville, South Carolina, not Salt Lake City, Utah, as we established last episode.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. This is going to be part one of our versus mode for There Will Be Blood versus No Country for Old Men. We decided to divide up the episodes to keep the episode lengths in check. We are verbose, so we wanted to allow ourselves time to discuss the films and have a good time debating the various aspects of them without running. I think our last one was almost 2 hours, if memory serves. So, and that was edited down as much as I could. So hopefully you listeners appreciate that as well. So today's episode, we are starting with There Will Be Blood. But first, we are going to celebrate a little milestone in cinema history. On this day in 1979, at the 32nd Cannes Film Festival, Apocalypse Now, directed, of course, by Francis Ford Coppola, won the Palme d'Or, along with a film title that I'm probably going to butcher, but Die Beichtstummel, directed by Volker Schlondorf. I've heard of one of those movies, not the other, but I didn't know that you could get, a joint Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. So I learned something new today. I thought it was awarded to just one film, but I suppose if they can't make up their minds, they'll give out two of them, which is okay. I just rewatched Apocalypse Now for no other particular reason than I love that movie, and I hadn't seen the latest cut. Have you guys ever seen Apocalypse Now, any iteration of it?
No, but I feel like we are in an apocalypse now.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Ooh,
What about you, Will?
a little too real. Actually, I've seen it. It's been a while. I would definitely go back and be willing to watch, because Chris was talking before we started on about how there's a few different versions that are out there, but I don't remember which one I've seen. So I would be interested I don't think I've seen the extended cut. I don't think I've sat down for about 4 hours. So I probably watched whatever the least longest version is.
Is
There's
there
a very
version
easy way to
where
know. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
is there a version where Harrison Ford is doing a voiceover? Because I definitely want to watch that one.
There is a version. Actually, all the versions contain Harrison Ford, who, because of the prolonged shoot of this movie, like they did not know by the time it was released that he was going to be a megastar from Star Wars. So, notoriously long film shoot out in the jungles, leading to the heart attack of Martin Sheen, several nervous breakdowns of Francis Ford Coppola, amongst other things. The filmmaking story behind that movie is legendary, but you do get actually some Harrison Ford, believe it or not. I know you're being cheeky, but he is in all versions. And Will, the way to know if you've seen the long one is there's a extended sequence in a French plantation. So if you've seen if that rings any kind of bell, and it's all about the failure of modern colonialism, and there's this whole political discussion. Again, some people found to be boring and dry. They kept most of that into the most recent version, which is kind of the splitting of the difference, I guess you could call it. I think it's a very interesting little meditation, but it does kind of slow the movie down a bit. But does that ring a bell at all?
Vaguely. So I may have seen the shorter of the two then at that point, but yeah, I'd have to go back and watch it again, which I would be willing to do, because it has been probably, I feel like most of the the classic films we talk about, it's been since college at least. So
yeah. It's always worth a rewatch in my mind. It's such a brilliant movie, and it's so atypical for a war movie. I think that's what has always kind of drawn me to it. Like when I watch a Saving Private Ryan or a Platoon, it's that's what people think of when you think of a war movie. Apocalypse Now maybe has some elements of that, but it's such a weird psychological trip, and it just feels unlike anything. I mean, it's adapted from a Joseph Conrad novel, so Heart of Darkness. So it has this weird element to it that if you've seen it, if you haven't, and you've never considered it because it's a war movie, I encourage you to. It is something so far out of the box for that genre to give it a go. Well, anyway, happy anniversary to Apocalypse Now and your Palme d'Or. I hope I'm saying that right. I think that's how you pronounce that. Like I haven't had French since high school, but I believe that isn't that golden apple. Somebody fact check me. Is that right? Isn't that what that translates to roughly?
Nope.
Yeah. No,
My
maybe.
semester of college French is failing me right now. I'm sorry.
Golden leaf, maybe something leaf. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, as we said in the session 0, we are not experts, so, and we will make mistakes. Without further ado, let's go ahead and draw us a side quest and see what we get here. I always forget you guys can't see these. So I could have just lied to you like every time. Although I suppose you can watch the published video version. Ooh, all right. So we have a Deus Ex Machina, which I believe this is the first time for this one. Talk about the moment in a film where you could no longer suspend disbelief for the sake of the plot, character, etc. So where your sense of your suspension of disbelief failed you. Anybody have an example of this? I can tell my story about Inception kind of fills into this, like a little bit.
Please do.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that.
So I know, much to the disappointment and shock of both of you at a recent episode, I said that I hated Inception. I've not watched it since I saw it in the theaters. But for me, where I had a hard time and ultimately could not wrangle with this movie was why I should care about one of these companies, corporations over the other. Like, I know the Leonardo DiCaprio character is sort of the emotional core, and I think his story is interesting, like his personal story. But I found that after it was about an hour 15 into this, like I was staring at my watch, hoping for time to fast forward, because there was a sequence where it's a bunch of nondescript men in skis and ski masks chasing somebody down a hill and shooting at them. And I'm like, what is happening here? Why do I care? Like, who are these people? There's nobody to latch onto besides DiCaprio, and I don't really know what the motivations are. I mean, I do, like, they want to successfully pull off that mind heist or whatever, but I'm like, why should I care? And I just felt like there was no antagonist kind of like pushing against that, like, in any interesting way. And yeah, about an hour 15 minutes into that movie, I couldn't be bothered to care anymore. Like, I was like, I don't think there's anything more to this. I think it was a stunning film, special effects wise. I think there's some really interesting concepts and ideas. I just couldn't be bothered to care. And it's disappointing because I know people love that, and I should give it another watch, right? Like, there's a lot of water under the bridge, and perhaps I'll find something. I think every movie deserves at least a second chance, unless it's Trolls 2, and then I think you're a Troll 2, and then you know what you're in for. So yeah, that's my example. I'll turn it over to you. I know I'm the minority in this, so please berate me all you want. I've heard it all before.
I mean, I feel similarly about a lot of Nolan movies, I will say. I'm not there for the plot. I'm there for the like interesting setup and the vibes.
Yeah.
Also, like, I feel like a lot of my love for Inception is tied to the fact that I'm pretty sure it was the first PG-13 movie I was allowed to see.
Gotcha.
So
Nice.
I was like, oh yeah, this is hardcore. Love this. Like, I think I was very into it specifically because of my age at the time. And yeah, just like the kind of like cool ideas it plays with. I think I was more interested in seeing kind of like what they were going to do in the world than really caring about the stakes. But I will agree that in a lot of Nolan movies, I'm confused about the stakes and why I should care. So unless there's a lot of visual kind of eye candy and interesting things happening, I'm going to lose interest.
Yeah.
I couldn't really understand why. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
No, sorry, Will. No, you're fine.
No, I was just going to say, I could understand from a certain, like, for me watching it too, I sort of wondered why the team like trusted DiCaprio's character, because it's like ultimately he's the one person who's hindering everything that they're doing because of when he conjures up in his mind, his dead wife. And so that for me, I thought, why do you trust him? And why is he leading your team? And maybe you should just leave him out and then everybody else can, do their thing. But yeah, that for me, I found that very strange in terms of the plot. But I guess the only other part during that film where I sort of felt like things were confusing was when you're trying to keep track of how time is going in each like set of like how deep you are in the dream versus the real world and how much time is going by simultaneously, and then suddenly people are doing things faster than it seemed like they were doing them before, depending on the the cuts and all of that. And so it was sort of like I kind of go along with it for the sake of suspense, but some of that seemed a little bit like, could that really have been done with enough time, or what's going on? So I can definitely follow your train of thought on that.
I'm glad you bring up suspense, because like one of the pillars of suspense is that you have to care about the characters. So again, technically speaking, they had everything there brilliantly set up to have suspense. It's just that because I lacked any sort of like empathy or sympathy, or it was all full on apathy for me. Like whether they succeeded or failed was irrelevant to me. And I felt like such like a Martian talking to people about that movie, because I was like, man, no, I hated it. That movie had such a negative, like profoundly negative effect on me and like my perceptions of his stuff, that I didn't see The Prestige, which I think was that after that or before, but I hadn't seen it
before that.
I didn't seek it out till years and years later, because it was sort of like an inside joke on a podcast that I really like. And I was like, well, now I have to I have to watch this, because I need to understand where all these jokes are coming from. But Interstellar, like I skipped that like altogether. And then like as I kind of backtracked and started watching some stuff, like I realized I just kind of have a love-hate relationship like with Christopher Nolan. Like I either like love his stuff or I loathe it. There's really no in between. Like Memento is a great example of one that I think is high concept, that is incredible. Like yeah, it has a convoluted plot, but like the more you learn about that character and kind of, especially on like subsequent rewatches, like I think it has the opposite effect, where like you're so invested in that there's so much sympathy there. He's kind of an asshole based on I don't want to spoil what he does at the end of the movie, but it essentially does something that is going to result in somebody like who arguably doesn't deserve to die, like dying, because he's a little bit bitter about something. But like in any event, like I don't know, I find that a high concept movie that works in a way that just Inception doesn't. And oddly enough, I'm with Christopher Nolan through all like the world building in that. That's not what like ultimately like led to my like disbelief. Like I was on board for all of it. And I think it is a very cool concept, but just the lack of like I said, I don't know, caring about characters or their motivations just sunk the whole thing.
Yeah, I think another reason I didn't have that problem with Inception is just because, again, I was a 13-year-old girl, had just seen Titanic, and I was totally in love with Leonardo DiCaprio.
That's fair. He's a handsome chap. I mean, listen, like.
So he had my sympathy, regardless.
He's just trying to get back to his kids, man. Just trying to get back to his kids.
No, nothing against his performance, really, anybody's performance. Like Elliot Page, awesome in that. Like I think there's a lot of cool stuff, like just doesn't come together. And again, I know this will be the video that gets like 3,000 comments. Like
what?
The Nolan stands are gonna come out of the woodwork and get me. But yeah,
we thrive on controversy.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was the one who wasn't really big on the Godfathers. I mean, we can just start shooting them all off over here, man. Like it's okay.
Let's do it. Yeah, we can add a new segment that's like I don't know, like we'd have to come up with a clever title, but essentially you throw out a hot take and you sacrifice yourself to the mercy of the internet with your.
How about hot take, hot potato?
Hot take, hot potato. I like it. Absolutely. Well, thanks for letting me ramble on about why a beloved movie didn't work for me. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Well, if does anybody have anything to add about Inception before we move on?
I think it's got
No?
really great music.
Yes,
But I think that's
Hans
usually
Zimmer.
with yeah, I feel like
Ah,
that'll hold you.
It's the big loud wahs, like, and again, should give it another shot. Like, that's just what stood out to me. But like, I felt myself gritting my teeth, like in the theater, being like, "Whoa, okay."
Yeah.
see,
Which is weird because
that's where I disagree, Chris.
again,
I draw the
I
line at Hans Zimmer.
I fully admit that like it's been a long time. There's probably other elements to that score that I don't remember. I just remember the wahs. Weird because he's got similarly loud sequences in Blade Runner that I love.
And Interstellar.
Yeah, I haven't seen that still yet.
Oh.
Like, a little traumatized. I just assumed it was going to be shite, so I didn't watch it. But I should
It's
probably.
fine.
Okay,
You'll hear it, it'll be loud. It will
Loud.
be, that was when Nolan was like, we're gonna crank that music up to like 20. Forget 10, man. We're gonna double it. And you're just gonna hear a lot of music assaulting your ears. And you might hear what people are saying at some points, but that's not really important.
Yeah. Well, I think modern film in general is like that's kind of an issue, right? Like, I think there's some weird sound mixing happening. As was it you, May, that sent an article to us, or that might have been another group chat that was like modern sound mixing and like why more and more people are using subtitles. I feel like it was you, but maybe not.
I don't remember. But that is a problem.
Yeah.
I say as someone who uses subtitles pretty much every single time I watch something.
Yep.
Yeah, I've started doing that a lot too, my wife and I, because it's like, I don't know, yeah, sometimes you just can't really, or you think that you can hear it, but it's like the subtitles definitely clarify like like a line or two that was either really quick or there's something in the background that's just making it's just sort of distracting. So yeah.
I do also have some mild deafness from playing large pianos in tiny rooms as a child, but yeah, subtitles are
Nice.
helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I don't always turn them on, but there's certainly times when I do, and I never regret it. I enjoy it. But yeah, I digress. There was an article all about like modern films and sound mixing and how it's very different than it used to be, and like none of us are alone, I guess, in that sort of perception. And yeah, so anyway, Hans Zimmer, loud soundtrack. Oh, I will add that I love The Prestige. I didn't really mention how I felt about that. That's like one of my favorite Nolan movies. Like, instantly fell in love with that. Clear motivations. Couldn't really decide who I wanted to win in that, but I was like, I understand where both of these fellas are coming from. Okay, well, without further ado, let's push over to There Will Be Blood, is our first film we're discussing in this versus mode. And we'll talk in a few about the categories that we're gonna kind of use to compare and contrast these two films, and ultimately kind of, I guess, guide our decision on what is the superior film out of the two of them. But I wanted to just open it up to get some initial impressions, as we usually do with a film when we start talking about it. So take it away, Will. I'll start with you, and then we'll go to May.
Cool. Well, I feel like I said this about the last film too, about Apocalypse Now, but I feel like the last time that I watched There Will Be Blood was probably college, because I feel like that's when it came out, was when we were back at Clemson. And not to name drop schools or anything, but it was pretty awesome. But the it was I really liked it then. And I think I appreciate it more now, just from having watched more film since then, because back then I was still kind of in that phase where I was much more, it was easy for me to go into the default setting of just watching a film for entertainment, and then maybe picking up on a few, details here and there when it comes to like cinematography or the film score, and like certain themes that are like related to characters, or about certain stylistic elements, all that good stuff. But I really enjoyed Daniel Day-Lewis in this film, like, to me, that was what I remember the most, was just how much I remember watching him and looking at his eyes and thinking, this really, he is this character. Like, this is so, he is so intense in this film, and I love it. I mean, you can relate to a lot of like what he's going through, but at the same time, it's so much like, he'll be, in one moment he'll be somebody you can relate to, and in the next moment he's like this horrible person, and just cutthroat. And so watching it, and I think that in the relationship that he has with his adopted son, essentially, in the film, I really enjoyed. The music is great. It's like, from the beginning, it's just building up this sort of eerie suspense, like, what's going to happen? Everything's obviously not okay. I'm not supposed to feel okay. And it just kind of keeps building as it's going on, up until the climax at the end of the film. And so it was yeah. There's certain films that you sit in, and like you were talking about with Apocalypse Now, where it's so long that it just kind of feels long depending on the cut that you're watching. And for me, watching There Will Be Blood, it was not, it's one of those films that is long, but it doesn't feel long to me. Like, I got swept up in it, and I just kept going along for the ride. And so that's probably, in a nutshell, how I feel about that film.
Awesome. May, how about you?
So this is my first time watching it, actually. And I will say, like, in an era where it seems like every, quote unquote serious movie is 2.5 hours, this did not feel like 2.5 hours. Like, at the same time, it was like my heart was just hammering for like a lot of scenes, especially like that opening scene where there's no music. You see this guy doing this really dangerous work, and you're like, oh God, what's coming? What's going to happen? But yeah, no, it did not feel like 2.5 hours at all. I felt like every scene was very necessary. And I don't think as someone who's like loved films like Lord of the Rings and movies where there's sort of like evil personified, I don't think I've ever seen it done quite this way, where Daniel feels very much like greed and evil greed personified, but in a very still human, realistic way. That's cool. So yeah, I liked it a lot. I mentioned before the podcast, there were a couple scenes where I laughed out loud when I wasn't expecting to. The first one being when they managed to exorcise a woman's arthritis. I wish that could actually be done. It would be a great help to my grandmother, but sadly, we do not have Paul Dano here.
Nope. And even if we did, I question. We'll talk about this in a second, but I question the legitimacy of what he's all about. Yeah. The one that always makes me giggle, I think I responded back, was when Daniel's brother is like, Daniel,
from another mother.
I'm your brother from another mother. Like,
the pause.
Yep.
Sells it.
Yeah. I remember the theater. Probably a lot of college age kids all chuckled at that. Like, it's weird. Well, cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yes, I do think Daniel Plainview, you could argue, is evil personified, and it is a very unique sort of performance. And listen, this is one of the first films, if not the first film, of like the post 2000s that I knew when I was watching it that it was going to be like forever important. I was like, I'm seeing an all-time great for the first time, but also one of my favorite movies. And the second movie on this list is the same thing, and that happening twice in a year is just so spectacular and unusual. With No Country for Old Men, but this movie has got stuck. Like, it is wedged firmly at the back of my, not even the back of my mind, really the front of my brain. I watch this at least once a year. I can't help myself. I like quoting it. The soundtrack, as you pointed out, I mean, Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, one of my favorite bands, just excellent. And it's just a movie. I don't use the term perfect often or lightly when it comes to films, but to me this is as close to perfect as you can get for a movie, especially it's just so confident in what it is. So yeah, that's my take. Unabashedly love this movie. So I wanted to kind of, I guess, kick us off by talking about the main, the two principal actors. So we have Paul Dano and Daniel Day-Lewis, and each of them sort of represents a different facet of America of the time. So you've got Paul Dano is religion, and Daniel Day-Lewis as Daniel Plainview is sort of capitalism, personified, and the worst parts of capitalism personified. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about the tension between those two ideas, and then how those characters, like, their interplay, because there's a lot of scenes that are almost like inverse versions of one another. So like, for example, Daniel Day-Lewis dragging Paul Dano literally through the mud and slapping him around, and then you sort of see that play out in reverse, in the church. He gets his revenge. So anything you want to discuss about that? I'll let you kind of start us off with that, but how did you like the interplay between those ideas and how those characters sort of represented them?
Yeah, so I actually really wanted to see more of Paul Dano's character, Eli, because he's in some ways a foil to Daniel Plainview, but he's also just way more similar than I think, obviously more similar than either man realize, right?
Mhm.
It's just kind of like they each have their tool or their kind of way that they enjoy getting power over people. With Daniel, it's money, and with Eli, it's God and religion, right? And I feel like a lot of the things I'd heard about this movie beforehand, or that this is very much, about Daniel and his kind of rivalry with this nemesis. And I felt like sort of about that, more about just Daniel and kind of how greed leads his life. And I just wish I could have seen more of Eli, because the scenes with them both were so intense in a way that you didn't feel with the other, like, kind of like pseudo antagonists, like Henry and other people that Daniel had problems with. So yeah, I wish I'd
Yeah.
seen more of him.
Let me ask you, kind of as an aside, did you at any point suspect or wonder, because I know I did the first time I saw it, and then I think I clarified it in an interview or something. Did you wonder whether or not, like, Eli and Paul, were they, or is it Paul, right? Yes, Eli and Paul were the same person. Did you at any point, like, consider that the twins? Because I was like, oh, I wonder if this is like he's playing stupid, because there's like this moment when they meet where, like, it almost seems like maybe he's playing stupid, and like, he's kind of gotten the first bit of money out of Daniel, but I guess it's been clarified that they are indeed twins and separate characters. But I was like, oh, this would be so weird if it's like.
Well, I think that's rational, because based on Daniel's reaction when he sees Eli, he thinks that he's taken aback, like, visibly, when he sees Eli walk up, and he knows that if it was Paul, it would really screw up his plans to get this property without paying, oil prices. And I guess there is a read where Paul and Eli are the same person, but I think as soon as Daniel recovered, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, no, this is definitely the twin. He mentioned having a brother. But then he also knows about the oil, and Paul didn't think he did. But it also seems like Paul's very detached from his family at that point.
Yes.
So he probably just didn't realize Eli knew.
He wants his money and he wants to get the fuck out. He's
Yeah.
just like, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry to derail there. I just, I remember thinking, like, is that, like, because that would be kind of cool and weird, and like a brilliant stroke, like, for this character, if he essentially pretended to be somebody else and then has now grifted this man, like, right off the bat. But somebody who's not easily fooled, like, for somebody who's so shrewd, like I feel like Daniel's like he's fooled quite a bit, like at times, we'll talk about like one of the like kind of the betrayals in a bit, but so yeah, I agree with you. I could have gotten more of the two of them. There's only, I think I read like 2 scenes that don't feature Daniel in them, and one of them is a confrontation with Eli and his father at dinner. You're a stupid man, that whole bit. And then there's a scene, a brief scene with HW and Mary. Is that her name? Mary Sunday? Yeah. And that's it. So yeah, how about you, Will? Like, what do you enjoy the sort of the battle for the souls, or like how these two characters represent sort of the ultimate personification of capitalism and religion?
That was interesting. Some of the sort of the setup for the competition that we see on the one hand, like you're saying, between the two with religion and capitalism, but also like within their own families, like you were talking about with him and his father, Eli and his father, I should say, but then also Eli's competition with his brother in a way, because at the very end of the film, when Daniel is telling Eli, when he's trying to basically break him down, that he's using his brother as this sort of this bludgeoning tool about how, oh, your brother was smarter than you and you should have been like your brother, and and
Paul
so
was
it's
the
sort of
chosen
like,
one, is what he
yeah,
specifically says. Yeah.
and so it's like he uses his own religion against him, he uses that competitive nature against him. But in some ways too, I mean, that makes sense because Daniel is so competitive, where he would even be against his own, well, for who we presumably the one person he seems to care about at all through the entire movie besides himself is his adopted son, HW. But then at the very end, when there was like this, even this hint in his mind, in Daniel's mind, that that HW is going to be this competition now, he's like, nope, you're a bastard. No one cared about you, you're a bastard in a basket. And so it's like, damn, just the family dynamics are very interesting to me. But I guess in the sense of like the brothers themselves, like the idea of this, the brother for Daniel that he thinks is his brother at first, and then there's Eli and Paul, and that sort of interplay where it's not really as predominant in the film for either of them, but it's still there enough that I found that interesting and would have liked to have explored that a little bit more for each of them, and how that sort of affected their competition with each other. So, but yeah, no, I thought that was really good.
Yeah, their character arcs definitely harmonize like in a lot of really interesting ways. As you've kind of pointed out, the family relationships definitely, how they treat people, and like their how they kind of seek to gain power, and then really like even like again, you see how they interact with each other, sort of flip flop throughout the movie as far as who has the upper hand, and um neither one of them will admit to anybody almost but each other that they're kind of not really con men, but like they don't believe everything that comes out of their mouth. I think they're probably the one person, each of them, like that the other is maybe most honest with, or understands. Maybe they probably understand each other very well, whereas a lot of people might see them as a little bit more enigmatic.
There's also an interesting thing, like I realized later after watching the film, between the two, where like they both talk about like taking care of the townspeople, and like one of the first kind of like very light confrontations we see between Eli and Daniels, when Eli comes up to Daniel, wants to dress the well, but his like first question is like, how's it going, is everyone taken care of and accounted for? And at first it comes off as him like being a man of God and genuinely caring about the town. And like it's easier to see through Daniel's kind of spiel at the start of the movie, where he's like, oh yeah, it's a great, bring water and mills and great prosperity to everyone. And then as the movie goes along, you kind of see like there's a lot of people Eli doesn't care about. Like he never steps in to like keep his sister from being beaten, for instance. He really only cares about taking care of the people so that they feel then, you know, spiritually indebted to him, or, you know, they see him as an authority figure. And I don't know, I feel like that was kind of like my first inkling that these two characters are actually kind of the same person.
Yeah, no, there. I think that was a great point that you brought up at the kind of the top of the discussion. Is they are much more similar. Like, yeah, they might like be coming from different places as it were, but I think you're spot on. Like, they're almost exactly alike in many ways. What did you what did you make of the character of Henry and how that unfolded? It's sort of heartbreaking in a way. I think the first time that you see that, because it's like uh I don't know. It's maybe the first time that like it clearly, like, I mean, where I guess suppose you could argue HW is or isn't somebody that he cares for, but clearly the first time that somebody of his own flesh and blood, right, is there and he can confide in. And he has this sort of soulful confession about, I can't do this by myself anymore. Like, you know, I've been building my hatred for everybody, you know, bit by bit, and he seems to just feel a little unburdened by the fact that he's got flesh and blood and somebody that he can trust. And I think what ultimately, when you learn that it's not him, and he, you know, when he learns, more to the point, you can see him mouthing, and I just picked that up on this watch, you know, like, no, like, you know, he's almost in denial about it when they're sitting by the sea, and it's just like, man, it's terrible. But what do you make of Henry and how all that unfolds?
I have a quick question to the two of you, actually. I know it's been a while, but the first time you watched it, did you see the twist coming with Henry not actually being his brother?
I don't know that I was suspicious, but you know, but when Daniel was sort of put at ease the first time, I think I was as well. Oddly enough, because again, the first time I'm watching this, I'm like, he's such a shrewd guy. There's no fucking way, like, he's gonna get taken by a grifter. Like, you know, he's asking the questions. He's kind of doing his diligence a little bit, right? So no, I didn't. I was like, oh, he must be all right.
Doubted
You
him the
will.
moment that HR set the house on fire.
Yeah.
And that little pyromaniac did his thing. I'm like, nope, he's not the real deal. But I don't know why he set the house on fire. It just seemed like a really poor execution. Like, there's got to be
He's a
something else
kid.
you could do, like,
He's
to try and get. I mean, like, you're just trashing everything, man. But I did think it was kind of. I know you're not supposed. It's not supposed to be funny, but for me, what I kind of cracked up was when when HR is kind of like staring Daniel down after he did it, when Daniel comes out of the house and they lock eyes, and then HR like tries to, or HW tries to run away, and Daniel just chases him down and picks him up and just hauls him back. That, to me, I cracked up. I'm like, I know this is terrible. Your house is burning down right now, but that kid is pretty hilarious. So, but yeah, I didn't trust him as soon as that happened.
Yeah, I think for me it was I didn't see that twist coming, but I was like, something is off about Henry when like upon meeting Henry for the first time, Daniel goes on this long spiel about he hates people and hates to see anyone else succeed. And I'm like, even if you're kin with this person, you've just met him and he tells you all this, you're not like a little uncomfortable, like maybe questioning your decision to come all the way out here, unless you're desperate.
Yeah,
Sounds
I
like
guess
good management material.
I think he's just so desperate to tell somebody, you know, how he feels. He's had it bottled up for so long, and he might be a little, you know, drunk as well.
I get that on Daniel's part. I just like Henry
Oh,
didn't seem to react at all to that.
sticking around. I think he's just like, yeah, as long as there's a steady paycheck in it, buddy, you hate whoever you want, you know, it's fine. Interesting little tidbit that was deleted, bit of trivia, is that there was a deleted scene where, as kind of part of his confession, he tells Henry that he's impotent, sexually impotent, which I think adds an element to that character that's quite interesting, you know, to kind of read some of his I don't know, like evilness, toxic masculinity as maybe like displaced sexual frustration, perhaps a little bit, you know. But yeah, I did not know that until I was doing a little bit of research for this most recent watch. I was like, that's a very I guess, deliberate decision to withhold that, if it's something that they had kind of designed as part of the character. And there's no indication other than that you don't really see him at any point really interact with, flirt with, like, any women in the film, even when they're at like the brothel or whatever, the saloon or whatever they're supposed to be. But I was like, I kind of chalk that up to like, well, this is just not that kind of movie. There's gonna be any smooches, like. But did you
Never
guys
gonna
pick up?
look at a. I was gonna say I'm never gonna look at an oil rig the same way again
I was
after
going to
that, buddy.
say.
Especially when that thing exploded and then caught on fire. Like, holy shit. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe maybe that's why they left it out.
Yeah, they're like, it's too on the nose.
But yeah, overall with Henry, yeah, no, it was a really sad moment towards the end because you understand the desperation that would lead someone in that time to do something like that. And also just the fact it used to be way easier to take someone's identity. All you had to do is steal their journal, ostensibly. And it's, I get the anger from Daniel. And the fact that we've seen him set off into like violent murderous rage before makes it like not too surprising that that's how he deals with Henry, but still sad because it's like, if anything, this person's actually a con man like yourself and maybe can actually relate to you in a way no one else has been able to, because Daniel seems pretty profoundly lonely. In fact, I think that's as you mentioned, like a lot of why he confides in Henry and is willing to kind of not ask too many questions when he does come.
I guess it's any sort of trickery that he finds to be a threat when somebody, I don't know, just something about how even if they're able to relate to each other, it's the fact that he didn't see it coming. That probably just, that's it. You're the enemy now. Or maybe he just was really hoping he had a brother and then felt so crappy afterwards because it wasn't really flesh and blood for him. Or that he had a brother he never knew, whether or not he trusted anything else that Henry mentioned about why his brother died. But yeah, that was really sort of surprising. Like, in a way, I could understand why he did it from his character's perspective, but at the same point, it's like interesting to see like his self-destructive tendencies were very much there, and then sort of progress through the rest of the film.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't like. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, can we talk about the balls on Bandy for like discovering his gun and ostensibly the fact he just dug a grave, handing him back his gun and being like, yeah, just show up at church.
Yeah.
It's all good,
Just
buddy.
That's the Lord.
I love the line too when Daniel's like, "Give me the blood, get me the hell out of here." Like, he's just like, "This is fucking nuts." Like, yeah, give me the blood, baby. Like, he is so uncomfortable in that whole baptism scene. Yeah, I don't know. Like, he doesn't like being made a fool of. So I think a lot of it comes down to like he feels foolish. He tends to square off most angrily when he feels like somebody is like insulted him. The scene where the guy asks about his son one too many times, or it kind of implies that he's not currently getting the care and love that he deserves, and if he were to sell his interest, then he can be a proper dad, and then he's like threatens to cut his throat or whatever. And I think Henry's sort of like a emblematic of that, of like, somebody's made a fool of me and I need to erase all traces of that. Like, I don't want any reminder that somebody was able to basically infiltrate my soul, and make me inspire me to kind of confess these things that I've held inside. Like, it's just a profound betrayal, I think, that just ultimately he can't deal with or live with, so he's got to erase it. One last thing I want to talk about before we move on to our categories, to make this super quick, is the title, because I think both of these movies have interesting, awesome titles. So what's your interpretation of the title of There Will Be Blood? Is it just prophetic of the ending? Like, what do you think?
Well, I have to give it high scores compared to Blade Runner, of course, because no blades in Blade Runner, but plenty of blood, and There Will Be Blood. So gets a point for that. I mean, it's a threat, obviously, and I think it's I don't know. I don't have like very sophisticated thoughts on it, but I associate it with the fact that there's blood in the sense of the blood literally getting mixed in with the oil as they're pumping from people getting killed. And there's the blood in the church, and then there's the blood at the end, obviously, with the two men fighting. But it just seems like the track that these men are set upon because of their greed and ambition is going to leave blood inevitably, no matter their path.
Yeah. How about you, Will?
Yeah, I would say it was just the competition. That for me was where I saw the title coming from, was definitely it's a fight to the death. One of us is gonna be the victor at the end.
Awesome.
And that's pretty much all I've got.
No, it's perfect. Yeah, like I said, short is long. I love both of those interpretations. Yeah, for me, it's always sort of been like the violence of like capitalism and religion, both of those things were held up as like being these grand ideas, and still are, I think, to a large extent, as part of like American culture. And I think like it's kind of saying the title is like, okay, maybe, but also there's a very human cost and a very ugly side to both of these things that are held up as like pillars of American society, right? So
Yeah.
lovely stuff. No need to take a stance in this episode, but I do want to introduce the judging categories. Before I do that, I caught a glimpse of May's board back there. So
I have that, and I do have a question for the two of you. I'm really curious
yes.
about, which is, I was kind of surprised, I guess, at the main tension in this movie, because I have generally, like, looking back through history, seen sort of like how greed operates through the church and how greed operates through the economy is generally going hand in hand. Like if you look way back to like the old Catholic Church in Europe, and like how people generally kind of, I don't know, I see them as being tied together, not necessarily in opposition to one another. So I thought it was really interesting how that happened in this film. I don't know if either of you have thoughts on that, or like necessarily saw them as opposing forces or not.
Yeah, I think there's some connective tissue like drawn in this movie. Like Eli sort of implies that the stock market crash has fucked him out of a lot of wealth that he was able to accumulate in the years between when they last saw each other. Obviously the subject of money comes up many times with Daniel, and he says, oh, it's for improvements for the church and everything. But I think as the film goes on, like you realize like, nah, like he's trying to build up a power base of his own and accumulate wealth. As
There's an allusion to like televangelism as well, which is a huge way people can build wealth in America.
So yeah, I think there's some connective tissue there. Like I think they're in opposition of each other. I don't think it's like so much as like polarizing ideas, so much as like polarized men, but I don't know. Like I thought there was enough there where I was like, no, he's just as greedy. He's just a different I don't know, like a jungle cat of a different variety, right? Like one's a lion, one's a tiger, like they're both going after the sheep, so to speak, I guess, or the antelope, whatever. How about you, Will?
Yeah, I just felt like they both wanted to be, I guess, sort of thinking about the competition too, since money is sort of the result of being the best at whatever you're doing, whether it's trying to provide for your church or in this instance, I'm not trying to make like I'm not trying to paint broad strokes, so please don't hate mail. But
in the context of the film.
Yes, in the context of the film, yes. But I feel like in this instance, it's easy to understand where you have, it's sort of like anytime you have any sort of power, it's easy to get corrupted by it. And so if you are either the best business in town and you want to knock out your competition, then it's easy to want to take the the tact of, you know, cutting corners and being ruthless and outsmarting your competition however you think is the best way to do it, and justify what you do because you think you're protecting yourself or you're protecting your investments or whatever it is. I think that when it comes, conversely, I always felt like Eli just really wanted to feel important. I think that there's probably some stuff that we never saw between him and his dad that finally boiled over in the scene where he physically assaults his dad. I would have been interested to have seen that. And, you know, there's a lot of question about how he felt important compared to his brother, which that can definitely, you can hit a few biblical notes on that one if you wanted to, you know, talk the Bible and that. But I think that it's easy to understand him as wanting to feel important and wanting to feel like he was good at what he did and wanting to feel like a decent leader, but also sort of falling into the same trap of either being, you know, harping on the money issue or trying to be, you know, trying to push his weight around with Daniel and get what he wanted and use Daniel's influence to kind of position himself as well. Like in the scene where he's asking Daniel to, you know, before they start the oil drill, to mention a few words about the church and about presenting Eli as being the one who, you know, helped facilitate that.
There's a very specific way that he wants himself introduced to, like, it's very grandiose, you know, his already at that point, like his view of himself and how important he is to the community. He even says, this wouldn't have happened if you had let me bless the well, you know, when a worker dies.
Yep. So yeah, so I think it's very easy. I think the corruption aspect is very easy to see with that. And for any situation where if you know, you let it get too far, then it's easy to justify the next step that you take. So
if you're interested in money and religion, that might be one of the few redeeming qualities of Godfather 3 when we get around to watching that. Is like there's like the main plot of that film has got to do with like a large bit of money that the church wants from Michael Corleone and his organization. So
just when he tries to get out, they pull him back in.
All right. Well, just to introduce the board. Yes, please.
Okay, this is a quick one. All right. Over under, I like doing these budget questions. Do you think that the budget for There Will Be Blood was over, under, or exactly equal to 40 million?
I think I need to do more homework before these podcasts because this has been a consistent theme that I should have picked up on a long time ago.
I'm going to say under.
Okay.
But not much. I don't know.
I'm going to say over.
Just have to be different.
It's true.
So Chris was correct. The budget was actually 25 million. And I'm guessing a lot of that was just because like the props are very like simple frontier building, right? Seems like most of the special effects went into the actual like oil well and the explosion.
Which that scene was awesome. Terrifying and awesome.
Yeah.
A bit of trivia connection to the next movie we're going to talk about. That sequence when they were filming it interrupted the filming of No Country for Old Men because they were filming in the same area and that big black plume of smoke was visible and it ruined all their shots for the day. So they came over and watched the derelict scene. The Coen brothers came over, and
that's amazing.
That's cool.
That was like, to me, like, I never mind. We'll talk about this when we get to the scoring. Anyway, I have thoughts on the scene.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's definitely it's again memorable. So no need to come down, but I do want to like introduce like the categories that we'll be talking about it. And I picked categories that these films were up against each other for at the Academy Awards in 2007. So best picture, that's going to be kind of like our overall package judging criteria. Screenplay, so we're going to talk about the scripts and writing and evaluate each of them on that. Director, so you know, the Coen brothers and P.T. Anderson both have a very distinct style and stamp that they put on a movie. Cinematography, which just as much as I think this film is gorgeous. The other one is too. And Roger Deakins, who did Blade Runner 2049 and a bunch of other really, really amazing films, worked on No Country. So that'll be interesting to talk about. And then finally, acting. Technically speaking, Javier Bardem was a supporting actor nomination, whereas Daniel Day-Lewis was lead actor. But I still wouldn't mind contrasting those two fellers when we get to that discussion, because I think they're equally memorable roles, and that might have been the one saving grace that they divided those nominations. Like, it probably made it a bit easier to choose between them, because I think it would have been maybe the hardest choice had they gone up against each other, like, genuinely. So yeah, no need to come down on anything, but there's your category, so start mulling it over. As we move into the next episode, we'll obviously pick a winner for each, and we'll tally up the scores and see who comes out on top. Awesome. Anybody want to add anything before we kind of wind down and go into our final segment?
The one moment when I was like kind of cheering for Daniel is when he like kind of confronts Mary's dad about beating her, but he does it in the creepiest way possible.
Yeah, doesn't talk to him, does he? He's like,
no
more hitting, no more hitting.
Like, and he does it by grabbing her. He like gut punches her and grabs her.
Yeah,
that's not
then
much
takes a big
better,
old swig
dude.
off his flask too, like right after, if memory serves. Yeah,
like, you almost got a point. Yeah, you almost did.
Yeah, he undoes that quite a bit by the end. I think, contrastly, the most heartbreaking moment is the final conversation with HW. That tears me up every single fucking time I watch it. He's just like, there is no doubt, like, his intention is to just completely rip him to pieces before he walks out of that room. Like, he's
competition then. I'm also like super pissed. I actually looked up when ASL was like invented and like deaf schools became commonplace. They were widespread at this time. Like, he could have easily have learned just like some basic sign language to communicate with his son. And
does he strike you as somebody
refused.
Like, who would do that though?
No,
like,
but like ostensibly when HW was at least like a little kid, he did like love and care about him.
Yeah, maybe there's that question that I think that's an interesting debate, because Marianne and I last night were like going back and forth. I'm like, do you think he really, like, at any point in this movie, like, loves him? I was like, I feel like he does. I feel like he feels guilty when he sends him away, and like, he does feel. And then she was like, yeah, but then she's like, do you think it's maybe a perception thing where he's like more embarrassed by like what other people are saying about him? And I was like, oh, that's a good point. And so I went back and forth, but yeah, he wouldn't even go see Mr. Bandy out at the bandy track. Sure shit ain't learning ASL, man. People have to come to him and meet him on his terms. That's why he's like, see, that's not so hard. Like,
yeah.
I
think that when he was a kid, there was like a little bit of love. Like, it does seem like Daniel has a very tiny soft spot for children specifically.
Yeah.
Perhaps in a creepy way, but he does have a soft spot for children.
Yeah. Awesome. One last little character thing is, like, I noticed that he speaks almost explicitly in like the imperative, like, too. I don't know if you noticed that he's like, so when I say I'm an oil man, you will agree. Like there is like never a question. I just love the way that guy fucking talks. Like, there is not anything up for debate. It's just declarative and imperative sentences, period, the end. Just masterful. Cool. Well, let's play a quick game. So this could be a new one for the audience members. This is called Shot in the Dark. So prior to starting the podcast, we compiled a list of about 10 films or so each, of films that we'd never seen, with the intention that one of our lovely co-hosts will choose one, and we will attempt to explain what we believe to be the plot of this film based on pop culture knowledge, what's bled through, et cetera, et cetera. Like, so we're going to do our best to explain the plot of a film we've never seen, and our other co-host will probably laugh at us and ultimately hopefully tell us how accurate we are.
But maybe give us some hints along the way. We'll see.
Some hints. Yeah,
If we're feeling nice.
absolutely. So does anybody want to volunteer to go? And if you all need the list, I can always pop it over. It is in our little shared Google sheet or spreadsheet. We said we had lots of spreadsheets. That was not a lie. We do have many.
I think we
Anybody
should do
wanna volunteer?
a little name generator or
Yeah,
randomizer. I
randomizer.
think we should leave it to chance. Yep.
Okay. So this is just the order our names are from left to right in the Google Doc. So I'm 1, May is 2, and Will is 3. So here we go. And it is 3. So all right. So Will, in your best estimation, what is the plot of Where the Wild Things Are? Spike Jonze directed film starring James Gandolfini. I think you might have already gotten a hint on one of our prior podcast discussions, but it was like a brief aside. But
where somebody dies. I know. Yeah. Don't say. No spoilers.
I'm not saying a word. Yeah.
I feel like if I remember this, because I remember this book as a kid, but so if the movie is true to the book, and if my memory of as a kid is true at all, or even remotely close, then I should.
There's a lot of ifs in this statement, Will.
I know. It's not declarative.
No. Come on, inner plane view. Give me your inner plane view, buddy.
I am an oil man, and this is my associate HW. I think that. Explain a movie plot badly. Kid goes out into the woods, pretends to play with monsters, and somebody gets hurt.
You got to go. No, I want you to take me the whole journey.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I will affirm that there is a child, and he does go into a wilderness.
And there are things that he finds. They are there. And he interacts with them, and he comes to deal with some sort of childhood issue that probably has to do with, I'm going to say it's one of two things. There's either an issue with a parent, or he's going through depression, or he is dealing with, like, he doesn't have friends. Does he not have friends? And that's why he creates these creatures that he wants to go spend time with in the woods.
So far, so I mean, you're not doing bad. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens? What do you imagine would transpire? Once he meets these monsters.
He goes on exciting adventures. He has to deal with some evil monster that he's created in his mind that he joins forces with the other monsters to fight. And then I will say he defeats this other monster. And learns something about himself and his own inner confidence that he didn't know that he had. And I feel like that's not going to be what happens. But I'm going to throw it out there anyway, because that's the story I would have liked to have seen.
Would you like a hint?
Yes, I would.
There are things like eaten and not eaten.
Oh, well, that's exciting.
Do you have any guesses or suggestions?
I hope it's not the kid. I'm hoping it's one of his imaginary friends that gets eaten, but now I really don't trust anything now. I'm going to find out there's going to be a twist that I'm not going to like, where he's going to end up like dead.
No.
He gets cancer and he dies.
No.
Oh my god.
This movie is
If someone were to lose a body part, which part do you think it was?
I want to say he's going to lose so he's going to lose a foot, perhaps.
Max is going to.
I said someone.
Is someone? Is that the kid? Is the kid is Max? Okay. geez, I got to go back and read this kid's book again. I want to be like, what was I thinking? I want to say loses a leg. Somebody loses a leg.
Okay, someone loses.
We're going with Max loses a leg.
Max loses the leg. Amazing. Wow.
And then he has to
think
crawl like Daniel Plainview back to his house.
I think you're thinking of How to Train Your Dragon, but
I mean, not gonna lie, also a great story. So
ultimately,
should we save him?
Well, I want to ask one more question. So ultimately, he's, like, it's got to come to a close. Something's got to motivate him to return, back to like to his world, realm, whatever. What do you suppose that would be? Take your best stab at like why he'd want to leave.
It's the end of the day and he's hungry and it's time to go home.
It's not a bad guess. It's not right.
As most kids do. I'm hungry. Playtime, story time, imagination time is over. And
I mean, it's not completely wrong either.
No. It's not.
Or I was gonna say like asterisk. Some scenes may be excluded from that explanation, but
last question. Overall, how do you imagine the tone if you had to sum up the tone of this movie you've never seen in one word?
Fantastical.
All right, May, I'll let you do the honors. You can be the judge on this one. So how did Will do in accuracy?
Okay. First. We doing a 5-point scale or a 10-point scale?
10. Let's do 10.
10 might be helpful to help cushion it a little bit.
Yeah, same.
3 out of 10.
I was actually going to say 3 out of 10. I'm sorry.
Noise.
I'll give you
1 out of 5.
Than that.
Yeah.
I'll give you 4. So you did acknowledge that, the impetus of like why he is like leaving and the normal world and going to this magical place is he's basically a lonely, unhappy boy, and his parents are divorced, so you got the parental thing there, and like his like older sister's friends are mean to him, so you also got the friend thing, so there you go. But yeah, so he goes to the place where the wild things are, and there's a lot of stuff that happens. I pulled up the Wikipedia thing just to remind myself of everything. And it's a lot, but basically he finds these like magical monsters and they treat him as the king and it's all very fun. And then suddenly it's not. A bunch of the monsters like throw temper tantrums, and there's like some like a kind of a climax where one of the monsters named Carol rips off another monster's arm.
Oh, snap. Okay.
There's no blood. Apparently they're made of sand, so sand pours out. Because kids movie. But then one of them tries to eat Max, and then Max hides in another monster's stomach to avoid being eaten.
Solid.
And solid plan. Max escapes the stomach, is kind of put off by all of the monsters acting crazy, kind of like understands more of what his mom's going through because he's also been acting out, and he goes home and he has some soup. So he was hungry.
Nice.
Did I leave anything out, Chris?
No, I think that pretty well covers it. The tone of this movie, I would say, is morose. Like that's the thing that I remember watching it. So like where the book is like all about, rompuses and like, like letting your inner child energy out and your imagination run free. This is like, imagine if he got to like the monsters and they just all had existential crises and like just were not fun or happy. And they kind of put all their eggs in the basket of Max. Like he's kind of like this brief, like little light. And then they realize that like he's actually not all that cool or awesome. And then like they attempt to kill him, like basically, or at least one of them does.
It's so, like Cormac McCarthy remade this book.
Yeah. I Yeah, this is totally could not be more different from the book. So, but I think you did an all right job, man. Like, well done. Like, I mean, that's what's fun
Sweet.
about these is like we've not seen the movie, so you have to go off of the trailer that you probably saw with everybody else with Arcade Fire, which made me think the movie was going to be maybe a little more
I
like
know.
whimsical and fun. But yeah, cool.
Nice.
Well,
I'll take
the
it.
last. Yeah, hey, like I said, man, easier said than done, right? I was looking at my list. I was like, oh God.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Um,
flop mine. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Yeah, I think we should do another one of those for part 2. Like just swap hosts. That'd be fun. Well, that does it. I cannot wait to talk about this next movie. There's a lot of similarities in setting and some other things, but it is a completely different ride, and a movie I love equally as much as There Will Be Blood. It's just a different kind of film. So very excited to see one of the all-time great movie villains, Javier Bardem, who is such a lovely person in real life. If you've ever seen interviews or anything, like he's such a sweet, like I don't know, like artist. Like he really just loves the arts, and he's just not at all like his character, but he's fucking scary as Anton Chigurh, as we'll see here shortly. So watch along with us, and we'll also declare a winner next episode, so you'll know, according to ScreenQuest, what's the better movie definitively, which is really the only list that you need to have when it comes to these two films. So you can just we'll change. I'll update the Wikipedia page to reflect it. Actually, under the accolades section, I wonder if I could do that. We should see. You know, that'd be a cool
I
little
mean,
Easter
you
egg.
can. The question is how long it stays up.
That is true.
I mean, it's not false. Like we can
You're gonna cite
say, like
yourself?
ScreenQuest, nominated for like
We have to come
best
up with
movie.
we have to come up with like a name for the ScreenQuest Awards. A screeny, a
A
questy.
screeny, a questy, yeah, a squesty, yeah. We should call them Sethies after Grandpa Seth. That's what they should be.
Yes.
Just his disembodied head floating in a
You've
mirror.
already got your theme song, your theme music to play
I
it
know.
too. Oh my
Grandpa
goodness.
Seth. Amazing. All right. Well, let's bring this home. You can follow us at ScreenQuest Pod on Twitter. Please do engage with us, like, share, subscribe, all of that great stuff, and we'll see you next week. We love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye guys.